Moving into a new country as an expat poses a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of new things that you're likely to experience, whether it is learning a new language or having to navigate a different legal system or having to figure out how to deal with things like residency or even citizenship, which probably you've never actually thought about before in your life. Well, it turns out for an awful lot of expats, it is either the first time or the first time that they're doing it alone or in a new scenario that they have to get internet access. I'm Scott Allen Miller. This is my life living in León, Nicaragua. For so many people, I have these conversations. It turns out there's a lot of the core things that you need to know and consider when looking for internet access, and importantly, when looking for where you're going to live, whether rental or ownership, that people are just not necessarily prepared for because they've probably never had to actually stop and think about it before. If you think about what life is like in the country that you're from, chances are wherever you lived at that place at a time when internet access was first introduced. And so you probably fell into the providers that you use via a very organic process, that they were simply the first ones that were offered. So you moved to them, and maybe you didn't like them and someone advertised on television and you moved to someone else. And you know who the players are very well because you have friends and family who have had them for a long time and can give you comparisons, and mostly you shop based on price and ads on TV. It's basically all the information you need is presented to you all the time, and so we don't really think about it very much, and chances are you probably got your internet long ago, and very few people change other than calling them up and maybe getting a new speed or trying to see if they can qualify for a deal. But actually coming into a brand new place and making start from scratch decisions about internet is something that very few people either do ever or do very often. I work in IT, so this is something I do every day, and I help hundreds or thousands of customers to make these decisions all the time. But for normal people becoming expats, probably for the first time, this could present an entire decision process you've never had to look at before. So we're going to talk about a few of the factors and things you need to think about in general, and we'll mention a few examples being here in Nicaragua, but we're going to give this a very general approach so that this applies to anyone. So we're going to get to how to think about acquiring and how to approach getting internet access right after the bump. For most people, few things in their life are going to impact their quality of life more than their internet access. If your internet is down, it's probably not as bad as if you have no power, but unlike having no power, you can't mitigate it by simply putting solar on the roof or figuring out how to use a bunch of batteries that someone charges somewhere or grabbing a generator. You are at the mercy of your connections to the outside world. The internet, for many of us, is our gateway to the planet, to other people, to social communications, and for many expats, it becomes an extremely important lifeline because unlike a lot of life in the United States where you have family and friends that you've likely known for a long time, or wherever you're from, right? I'm from the US. Wherever you're from, you probably have family and friends and all these connections and all this knowledge about how to reach people and where to go for things. You're generally just more socially connected. And a lot of things in North America especially use antiquated pre-internet technology. So there's a lot of phones still out there that work without the internet and so forth. There's still mail. People coming from the US are often talking about, how do I deal with these ancient phone systems, ancient texting systems, ancient mail systems that much of the world doesn't use or think about anymore. And when they're coming to a new country, they're surprised that everything's much more modern and uses the internet, and people have done away with, sending junk mail and advertising with magazines in the mail. And so those things generally don't happen. So it's a different world to some degree, but it makes us more dependent on modern technology. So it's not that we have more risk, it's simply that we need to take that one decision a little bit more seriously, something that we may have been able to overlook in our old lives because we had so many social networks to keep it from being so important. When we move far away, being able to make phone calls, send those messages, receive data, and keep in contact with people, much more critical. And we're going to be using it more because we're just farther away, right? You can't go down to the bar and meet your friends. Maybe you have new friends you can meet, but chances are you're not bringing your family and friends with you. That would be great if you're able to. So we have to think about these things in a new way. So the first thing is consider your internet to be super important. Don't treat it as a offhand, not important decision. Yeah, you can get the wrong one and get another one. Of course, you can get two and mix it. There's a lot of things you can do, but it's the same as anything, right? You're not going to want to spend extra money. You don't want to have to get a second one because the first one didn't work. You don't want to get frustrated. Put in a little bit of effort, and one, just treat it as an important thing. Two, when you're buying a house, building a house, renting an apartment, whatever it is you're going to be doing, maybe not staying in a hotel for a week, but even then you probably want to think about it a little bit. But for anything that's more long-term, ask these questions. Make sure you know what your internet options are or what comes with the building or whatever before you sign that lease. So many people, even in the US, businesses that are 100% dependent on their internet that will go out of business if they don't have good internet will often sign leases, pay expensive, like get all their facilities going, get people bringing in furniture, start setting things up, and then go, oh, by the way, we have to actually do business here. They'll think about everything else, but not the things that matter for business. And then they'll be like, so how do we get internet? And then you come in and we're like, there's no provider in the area. You did this on a back road by a river across the street. No one runs here. You can't run your business here. So this looks pretty and all, and this, you didn't pay an arm and a leg for it because it's worthless, but now you have to put all your staff somewhere else because they can't work here, right? Same as if you went out into the middle of a field 100 miles from anything and you said, I'm going to put a factory right here. And then when you're all done, you go, so how do we get power? People would think you're insane, right? But people do this with the internet all the time. There's like, well, we'll figure out the most important thing for the average business afterwards, and we'll put all of our time and money into things that don't matter. Seriously, people do that. So when you're getting a house, this is true for anything, anywhere. Now, if you truly don't care, if you have access to the outside world, you truly want to be off-grid to the point where you're not going to have internet access, you don't care about a cell phone, by all means. But if you're a normal person, your internet access of all types are super important for you. And so for us, for example, we have to have good house internet, right? That's your connection to the house, the thing that you use to connect your computers and so forth around the house. But we also care about the internet that's coming in over our cell phones. We're not going to talk about that today, but I'm going to point out that this is important for most people, especially expats. It matters to us that we have house internet and good cell service at our homes. We want backup. If the power goes out, if the internet to the house goes out, we want to know that our phones are going to keep working. Maybe not for watching movies, but at least we can get WhatsApp messages out, receive information, order pedidos jaw, and do the basics. If we have an emergency, we want to be able to, get a doctor, call an ambulance, call some friends, call the police, whatever. We don't want to be completely cut off. As Nicaraguans here or locals, wherever, they have a lot more mechanisms like, oh, my neighbor's going to call, someone's going to jump on a motorcycle, go down the street. We know what to do. They may not have the same dependencies, but as an expat, chances are your dependencies on that is going to be extremely high. So treat it as important. So you treat both types of internet as very important. Don't blow it off. Don't, build a house and then walk out into that field where you're building and take out your cell phone and go, wait a second, there's no service. Don't buy the plot of land if you don't know what the service is. Once you know the service, you decide to buy it anyway, hey, that's okay. But make sure you have that information first so you're making informed decisions. Otherwise, it's like buying and you don't even know, what kind of soil it is or what the view is or how big it is, right? We would never do that. Make sure you know what your connections are. Okay, once we know we have options, now we need to know how to think about it. And this comes up quite often in our expat groups and in discussions I have. People start with a few things. One is a general, complete misconception of what internet is like where they're going. Now, I'm trying to do this as a general video, so of course there's some places you may move, Italy, Spain, where internet is atrocious. There's also a lot of places you might move, like Nicaragua, Mexico, Argentina, where the internet is excellent, right? So it all varies where you're going as to what it's like generally. But what I've met is tons of people who do no research about the places that they're moving to, assume generally that it's terrible, which is surprising because often they're coming from places that are famous for how bad their internet is. They assume that the place that they're moving to is so much worse than whatever they're used to, and they act from a position of refusing to do any research and just assuming worst case scenario and never putting in good internet and starting directly with terrible internet options that you would only consider if good internet options did not exist. And the reason that they jump to that when you ask them is always, oh, there's good internet here? It never even occurred to me to ask. Of course, there's almost certainly good internet anywhere in the world that you're going to be. Exceptions exist, of course, but almost always there's going to be good internet options. Never just assume that places don't have it, especially when you're in a place famous for how good their internet is. That would be super weird, but that is a driving factor in how much I see people putting in bad options, right? Just not giving themselves good internet. So either assume that good stuff exists and go look for it, and then be, disgruntled when it doesn't exist, or do some research, ask some questions. Don't just assume nothing good exists and only look for terrible options. That's the first thing. Second thing, need to understand that wired media is how you do internet at home. What is wired media? That is either a fiber line, that is a piece of glass that runs into your house and connects to your equipment, or a cable line, that is a copper line that runs into your house. Now, a lot of people, especially in North America, are going to try to tell you that somehow fiber is better than copper. That is utter marketing BS. There's no truth to that whatsoever. Fiber may be cheaper and more effective for the company to provide. Sure, maybe. Copper may already be there and be good enough. Sure, maybe. Either one can be good. Either one can be bad. The fact that one is glass and one is copper is not relevant to you. You care about the service that is delivered over that line, not the type of line. That's kind of like saying, well, this was cooked in a skillet and this was cooked in a wok, and one's going to be good and one's going to be bad because wok's good and skillet's bad. No, that makes no sense at all. A good cook can make good food in either one. They may have slightly different cooking properties. One might be a little bit bigger or more expensive or whatever, but at the end of the day, nothing that anyone has ever told you about fiber or copper is relevant to you as a customer. They are things that the company may care about. Fiber's easier to maintain, copper's quicker to roll out, whatever. They are not relevant to you. The moment someone says, well, says one is faster, they're lying to you, right? That is not a true thing. One is not faster than the other. The speed of your data is determined by the service, not by the media. Right? You are not faster or slower because you're on fiber or copper. Completely BS. The fastest things that you ever touch in real life are copper, but everyone claims fiber's faster. Why? That sounds good, right? It's more confusing, so people just fall for it. It's kind of like a highway. One is made out of gravel, one is made out of concrete, one's made out of tar, one's made out of grass. The speed limit's 20 miles an hour, and your car cannot go any speed except 20 miles an hour. It can't go faster. It also can't go slower. Which one's faster? Some people are going to say, well, the blacktop's got to be faster. No, it's 20 miles an hour. That is the speed your car can go. They're all the same speed. That's how they work, right? The speed is the speed. So if you see, 100 megabits on copper and 150 megabits on fiber, yeah, 150 is faster than 100. But what if you saw 200 megabits on copper and 100 megabits on fiber? Now the copper's faster. It is the speed of the service you get. And that speed is a listed number. We'll talk about what that means in a second. But it's a listed number, so look at that. You don't care if it's copper or fiber, but you want one of the two. Those are the only two means that we have in the modern world for delivering internet by land to your house. That is terrestrial internet. You do not want anything else. So you want to make sure you're able to get one of those two. That's what gives you speed. That's what gives you reliability. That's what gives you options in the future. That's what means you're connected to the real world. What if those don't exist and you still want to live in a location? Well, there are other options, right? The first is called Wi-Fi internet. Now, a lot of people misuse the term Wi-Fi to mean a lot of things, and that's a problem because this becomes very misleading because you need these terms because there are no other possible terms to use for how these things work. So Wi-Fi internet is a very specific thing where they are delivering internet to your home, to your property, via Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is an extremely specific technology. There is no gray area in what it means when someone says Wi-Fi. There's a few little options within the Wi-Fi thing, right? But there are a set of technologies that are extremely meaningful in that terminology. And it is very useful and common for remote locations to use Wi-Fi when copper and fiber are too expensive or too far or too difficult to run. For example, if you have a hillside or a lot of trees or just a river and there's a lot of stuff and there's no way that someone's going to trench for just your house in this remote location. No problem. Wi-Fi can work, and Wi-Fi can, if done extremely carefully, do a really good job, but it is very difficult to do well, and the nature of people who need Wi-Fi is that they're not going to do it well. That is one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. If you're in a position where you built a house and you didn't care enough to have copper or fiber as a pre-known thing, you're willing to put up with wireless, well, guess what? The wireless provider knows that, and they're under no strong incentive to provide you a really good service because they know you're only using them because you have no other option. If you had other options, you wouldn't come to them at all. Even when they do a great job, they're not going to be as good as the fiber or copper could be for less money. Again, you could have a terrible copper provider and an amazing Wi-Fi company, and as a theoretical thing, they could deliver you a better service. Yeah, in theory. But in the real world, market pressures say that that will never happen. They know they have you. You are stuck, and there's no way you're going to leave them. So you're going to pay more than you need to, and the service is not going to be as good as it could be. If you're going to build your own Wi-Fi system like this, where you're putting up towers and getting big antennas, and you're buying really expensive equipment, and as a theoretical hobby project, or you're a business that has some really special need, you decide to do this yourself on both ends and be your own provider and put tons of money into it and lots of effort and really research it, yes, you can make with Wi-Fi some pretty amazing stuff. But you're talking very technical, very expensive, and very niche. Now, I happen to work for ISPs building these systems, so I have some knowledge of them, right? I have helped represent on the engineering side the people who are building the towers and putting up the Wi-Fi system, so I know a lot about how this works. I have thousands of customers that I've helped with these different things, so very aware of it. Yes, and it could work for you, and there are providers in nearly every country that use Wi-Fi because it is extremely cheap in the way that people typically do it. It allows people who have very little investment to build tiny, poor, slapped-together internet providers very quickly and gain some customers and gain some small amount of money. In the United States, it doesn't tend to work very well except for the most remote locations. But in much of the world, there are remote areas where people just aren't that concerned about internet access, and these providers tend to do kind of well. You're not going to be billionaires from that, but there are a lot of people who are making a living providing internet in this way. Often stolen internet, which is often what makes it so cost effective. So Wi-Fi is an option, but you need to be very aware that it is almost always going to come with extreme limitations and a lot of pain. Plus, it's not very good in big weather. You have to make sure that the antennas don't move. If a tree moves in the way between you, that could cut off your access and so forth. So it's very complicated. It tends to be flaky. It is something you put up with. It is not something you desire. Now, there's also in the modern world, very modern, right? This is not something you would have really considered 5 years ago, is we start to be able to get internet over the phone networks, right? This is the LTE, the 5G services, things like that, 4G LTE. Those services are fast enough that some people will use them as their home internet. This is a step worse in general than Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is point to point. It tends to use big antennas that are pointed straight at your house with really big pipelines so they're able to get high speed directly between your house and there, and both sides put in specialty equipment. When you're dealing with 5G or something like that, this is point to multi-point. So you have one big tower that goes everywhere and lots of people connecting to the exact same antenna, and they're not using these big focused, under normal conditions, they're not using big focused antennas. So it's much cheaper, it's much easier, but it's not in any way designed to deliver the same quality of service. This is yet again another layer of not as good, but you could use it in a pinch. This is basically the equivalent to your entire house tethering off of your cell phone, which you absolutely can do, but it creates a lot of difficulties, and it's just not something you generally want to try to do. Then lastly, if all those things aren't available, the last thing you would want is satellite service. Now here in Nicaragua, we don't have any legal satellite providers. There's no satellite provider that provides service officially to the country that we know of, and the country does not have any equipment for satellite that is approved by the telecom department. That doesn't mean you can't get it, and much of the world is in the same boat, but lots of the world does have satellite equipment. So many places it's an easy option that's well within your selection of choices. But here in Nicaragua, if you're going to do it, you have to use smuggled gear. You always risk that you're going to get caught and in trouble with it. Probably not a big thing, but you're probably going to get fined because they know you smuggled gear in. And you always have the risk that the providers may cut you off, right? And in some cases, we have purchased that equipment and never had it provided and had the satellite providers just steal the money, right? So you need to be a little bit wary that because it's not official, because there's no way for you to have a recourse against a provider. If they cut you off or don't provide the equipment or don't give you the support you pay for, you're really just hopeful that they decide to provide good customer service. They're under no obligation, no legal obligation to do so, and you're generally going to be hiding from the government. Now, that's not everywhere, but so that is the mechanisms by which you can get internet. You always want to make sure you're wired landlines if at all possible. Never go for any of the other options unless you can reliably prove that those were not available to you. And Almost always, I would say 8 out of 10 times that I talk to people who go for these terribly flaky and generally expensive alternative options, almost always when I say, why didn't you get good quality wired networks? I go, I never even looked into it. I just went for the worst and started there, assumed nothing good was available. And they're like right in the middle of a city that's famous for its good internet. They have competing providers, multiple fiber providers, multiple cable providers, all kinds of good service, and often they're cheap. Like when we're getting like these services over here, we're often talking hundreds of dollars, like $100 to $200 in a lot of the world. When we're talking these, we're often talking 30 or 40, at least for equivalent of this. It's amazing how much people pay for bad because they just trusted that nothing good would exist. So it's an important point to consider that you don't want to fall into that trap of just assuming the wrong thing and never looking into what you need. The storm rolled in fast while I was filming. Now that you know about the media that you're looking for, let's talk real quickly about speeds. There's 3 important numbers that come with any internet service, and very few internet providers are going to tell you all of them. If they don't tell you one, they're hiding it, because if it was anything good, they would brag about it. So your first number, when you get a speed, it's going to be in megabits per second. In some cases, it could be gigabits per second. But that's super fast. No one's dealing with that today in the real world outside of very specific metropolitan speeds. But gigabit just means 1,000 megabits. So if you're talking anything like that, you're talking super fast. In normal situations, normal expats are looking at things between 5 and maybe 50 megabits as the fastest. And that may sound small. I have other videos that explain why that's not small. Those are not bad numbers. In the United States and in other markets, there's places that they sell unused bandwidth at very high numbers, and it sounds really impressive. They are generally pointless or nearly pointless. You're not really getting something for that speed, and you generally don't pay all that much for it because they know there's no way for you to use it, right? It's like saying, I have 3 cars, I need to go down the highway, and they're like, I'm going to give you a 100-lane highway. And you're like, well, I mean, that sounds nice. It's a bit better than a 5-lane highway. But 3 cars can only go 3 lanes, right? They can't use anything faster than that. So it doesn't matter that you have more lanes because you're not going to be able to use it. So most people have no ability to use anything above about 50, and even 50 is more than most people will ever notice. Normal people generally can get by between 3 and 30, 35 and be absolutely adequate and never even notice that they have a small number and are saving money. So it depends on what you need, but be aware that first number that they're going to give you, let's just say it's 30 megabits per second for most expats, that's going to be a perfectly adequate number, at least as a starting point. I have 50 megabits per second, and I do an amazing amount of media, and it works just fine. What I like a little bit more, yes, I run a business, multiple users off that 50 megabits. I have a ton of media stuff that goes on all day, way beyond what any normal person does, and it's enough for me. So just use that as a gauge, right? And I run a technology company over that speed as well. All the things, basically anything that someone says, well, I do, and then they name something and say, well, I need a fast speed. Whatever they name has no benefit from fast speed. Always. It's just the more doesn't matter, the more people are likely to say they need a fast speed for that reason, because it makes them feel good. It's one of those things that salesmen prey on, convincing you that what you do is special, right? Oh, you make calls? Nothing uses less internet than calls. And yet, well, you need super fast internet. Nope, completely a lie, and so forth. The next number, so that number is your download speed. That's your first number. Your second number is your upload speed. This is the number everyone hides. This is what costs money, is having a good upload speed. This is where I also have 50. Most people who are like, I have gigabit, I have 500 megabits per second. But then they look at this number. This is the one that IT professionals look at, and they'll often be like 5 or 10, right? So where people are like, I have to have 500, to an IT person, they'll be like, you have 10 megabits per second. That's all you actually have, right? So I have 50 by 50, as we say. I have 50 down and 50 up. If I didn't have 50 up, I would never be able to do what I do. Normal people who are just, checking their email, watching some Netflix, you don't need a very big number on that backside. You could have a 30 by 5, 30 by 10, and that would probably work just fine for you. But be aware, it is that smaller secondary number is the one that technical people look at for speed. And that big first one is the marketing one that they use to sell people, because it sounds good and people don't know how to evaluate it. But it is, for most people, the more important number, but not if you're doing something intense. It's the second number. It's almost always that's going to be be important. The third number is your latency. This is just measured in milliseconds, and this does matter. You want a good low latency. And of course, you want your connection to be stable. That's separate. Low latency is just the amount of time it takes to go from you to the nearest server and back, more or less. It's not exactly how it's defined, but basically that's the round trip time to get connections places, and it varies by where you're connecting to, but that is a very important number to have very low. Your first numbers you want large, like larger is better. You don't need them very large. That last number you want small. Smaller is better. When I was in Dallas, we used to have a 2 millisecond latency. Most places are looking at more like 7 to 9, and as long as you're under like 20, you're probably okay. It's a difficult number to describe, and it's very complex how you measure it, so we're not going to go into details, and those are numbers that they never will tell you. They're only things you can measure for yourself. But those first speeds, those are things you can ask about, but don't get caught in that trap of being told you need giant numbers. That's just a way to get the price way up. They know, and this is very much reality. If you have 30 megabits per second, or you have 50 megabits per second, you get 100 or 200 or 500, the amount of internet that you're going to use is roughly going to remain the same. You're not going to change your behavior, or not very much, based on the speed that you have, nor is it going to impact your life. You're not likely to notice. You're still going to watch Netflix in the same quality at the same speed. You're still going to upload things that you're doing at the same quality at the same speed. You may never notice that you've gotten a faster connection. If you do, it's really minor, but chances are your behavior is not going to change, so they know that the more they sell you, the more money they make, and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't cost them a dime, because nothing changes, right? Speed that you don't use is not speed that they have to provide. Okay, so just be aware. Small numbers generally make the most sense. Between 30 and 50 is really kind of the sweet spots for the average expat. Now, the thing that really matters is having a good provider. One, they have to provide you a good, reliable service and provide good customer service to make sure that if anything goes wrong, they're there to help you. That really matters. And you need ones that are going to have a good price and offer service where you live and so forth. So once you have looked and figured out that you want cable or fiber, once you have figured out what speeds make sense for you, if you get more for super cheap, like whatever, but know what speeds you actually need, and don't worry about someone trying to market you more than that. You can always add more later anyway if you needed to. So then you want to find good providers and ask around. Again, I'm so surprised by how many expats move into an area and run out and go for the worst providers, the ones that no one would use if they were, evaluating and had choices. And they'll go out and talk to no one else. They'll go to everyone in town could have told them, yeah, they cost a lot, the service is terrible, they don't even offer the things that you need, and they'll just go with that and be like, is there anything else? Like in the United States, we would never do that. We would always evaluate what the options are. But when you're an expat, it seems very common to just go with the first name you hear. And I understand that a lot of people have no idea about buying internet, have never done it. And so what would you do? You might as well go with the first one you hear about, but you're almost always going to have bad choices if you do that. Ask around a little bit. Anyone who's had internet for any amount of time is going to at least be able to tell you, well, yeah, this provider's been good to me, this one's been bad. And look for the people who are working from home, who are technical, who actually have some knowledge about it. It's going to make a big difference. Here in Nicaragua, for example, in the Leon area, those of us who need good internet at home, we almost all use Teco. It is the fiber provider. They have really good customer service. We have really good experiences with them. We know that they maintain their network even when the power is out for extended periods of time. We have no problem with our internet going out. We know when we have problems, they rush over. If someone cuts a line, a truck hits a pole, they're out there fixing it really fast. If we have problems with our equipment in the house, they come in, they actually test and fix things. They actually replace things. They actually re-end the cables. Like, they do a great job consistently. We've been very happy with them, and I have them at multiple locations. I know I can get the speeds I need. I know they offer fiber. I know they offer very high quality service and so forth. Claro has a really good reputation. They typically offer cable, but sometimes they offer fiber, right? They're really well known throughout the region, not just this country, but many of the countries around. They're able to provide good prices and good speeds, and they're in the capital and all kinds of different regions. So you ask people, and very quickly people are going to be like, yeah, for normal home users, this is what we tend to use. For heavy duty users and business, this is what we tend to use. You can get really good information really fast, and eliminate most of those, oh, I ended up in such a bad situation. But be careful who you're asking, because if you're asking other people who know nothing about internet, you're going to perpetuate just random information, not necessarily bad information, but random information. But this is not stuff that's hard to ask about. Ask businesses, but look for the technical people, right? Same as you would in the United States. Look for professionals who know that stuff, people who are actually working with real businesses, who are knowledgeable about it, and they're going to give you a lot of good feedback really quickly it's not hard stuff, right? It's really quick and easy to know, but until someone has actually done it in the market, often people are left in the dark. But with a little bit of effort, a little bit of planning, don't rush into it. Don't just pick the first thing. Make sure you know what you're looking for, and then, you know, ask who's got that good customer service, ask who's providing a good quality product, and it's gonna get you a long way. These are the things you need to know, and you'll have a much happier experience. It'll be easier for you as an expat. It'll be cheaper for you in the long run, and you'll maintain better connectivity. Basically, everyone in the US, anywhere in the world, who skips these steps almost always ends up paying a lot, getting very little, and having really big problems with their internet, where their neighbors are having a great time and don't have to worry about it. And that's what these internet providers depend on. They know that tons of people are just going to pick whatever name they see on a billboard. They're going to go with them first, and they don't know how to evaluate it. And so if you don't know how to evaluate, make sure you're talking to someone who does. Thank you for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ScottAllenMiller. Comes directly to me. It's like Patreon, and help support the show with all the cameras, the internet I have to pay extra for all the media that I do. And of course, we have our GoFundMes in the show notes if you'd like to help some of the Nicaraguans that we are funding through those programs, whether we're helping them through cancer and taking care of their family, or through being out of work because they have herniated disc and need back surgery. We are helping raise funds and take care of some of the people here. And if you want to contact me, get in our social media, see my other channels, anything like that, get in the show notes, get in those comments, say hello, ask a question, and I will see all of you tomorrow.